Look, good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here. Today, I'm announcing that I've issued a compulsory recall notice for vehicles fitted with defective Takata airbags. This follows a recommendation from the ACCC following an extensive safety investigation. I've agreed with this recommendation because the previous voluntary recalls have not been satisfactory overall, and it's the safety of all Australians which is the first priority of this government. The compulsory recall will force manufacturers, dealers, importers and other suppliers to ensure that all dangerous Takata airbags are located and replaced as quickly as possible. Importantly for consumers, vehicle manufacturers will be required to cover the full cost of replacing these airbags. There's no doubt that this is one of the largest and most significant recalls in the nation's history, with a total of 4 million cars affected by defective airbags. This equates to around 2 in 7 cars on the road. Tragically, there's been one death and one case of serious injury in Australia as a result of the deployment of these airbags, and the government just doesn't want to see any more. It's also worthy to note that this recall is consistent with recalls undertaken in the USA and a range of other countries to ensure that drivers and passengers are protected from the risks associated with these airbags. Now, the compulsory recall notice requires all vehicle suppliers to recall and replace the defective airbags in their vehicles within a specified timeframe. To ensure a coordinated recall of this quite large size and scale, suppliers may recall all affected vehicles and replace all defective Takata airbags on a rolling basis, but these must be completed by 31 December 2020. Absolute priority will be given to replacing alpha airbags, which pose an immediate and critical safety risk. Priority in that schedule will also be given to airbags assessed as high risk based on the following factors: age, particularly where the airbag is over 6 years of age; location of the vehicle, in particular in areas of high heat and humidity; and the location of the airbag in the vehicle. Now, I want to reiterate that the decision to issue a compulsory recall is based on a recommendation by the ACCC following an extensive and thorough safety investigation, which included, importantly, consultation with affected manufacturers, industry stakeholders, international experts, and a range of other parties. The ACCC's recommendation includes an explanation of safety risks, details of reported deaths and injuries, the actions taken by suppliers so far, and an explanation of the reasons for recommending a compulsory recall to protect the Australian public. I urge all drivers, all Australians, to check Product Safety Australia website and their vehicle manufacturer's website to check if the recall applies to their vehicle. If their vehicle is not yet under active recall, they should subscribe to the Safety Australia website to receive updates about future recalls or continue to check the website for updates. I'd now like to hand over to the Chairman of the ACCC, Mr Rod Sims, to talk you through some of the more specific details, including the nature and scope of the recall.
Thanks, Minister. So the recommendation we've provided to the Minister is based on the work of our safety investigation that started in August 2017. We looked at basically all the expert reports that have been compiled around the world. We hired the world's foremost airbag safety expert to work with us on this. We've visited him, he's visited us, so we've got right on top of all the technical details. We've used our compulsory information notices to see what the manufacturers are actually doing, who were doing voluntary recalls and some who weren't doing voluntary recalls, so that we understand what they're doing and what they know and why they're doing what they're doing. We also consulted heavily with those manufacturers to understand the practical effects of a recall. So what we're putting in place is both workable and as immediate as it possibly can be. And we also consulted with other manufacturers of other airbags so we could get some sense of when other airbags would be available so the replacement could work in a very practical way. So as the Minister said, the compulsory recall applies to 2.7 million vehicles. You may remember when all this came to a head in around August last year, there were about 2.3 million vehicles. That expanded with greater knowledge to about 2.7 million vehicles now that have been subject to a voluntary recall. Of those 2.7, 1.7 have been replaced, which is great, but there's still 1 million airbags that have not been replaced. This compulsory recall adds to that 1 million airbags another 1.3 million airbags. About 850 of those are airbags that were from manufacturers who weren't recalling their airbags, and another 450,000 odd are airbags that will need to be recalled in future, particularly where an airbag's been replaced with a like-for-like replacement. This is, as the Minister said, a huge issue. This is, I mean, in some ways the biggest recall ever. It's certainly the only compulsory recall of a wide-ranging consumer good. So this is not something done lightly. It has been and has had to be based on enormous research and consultation. The essence of the recall is that it's staggered so that the airbags are replaced progressively and all must be replaced by the end of 2020. They're staggered according to the urgency, and what I want to stress here is that not all the 2.7 million airbags are dangerous now. Whether an airbag is dangerous depends completely on the age of the vehicle and the climatic conditions within which it's driven. So the problem with the airbag is the drying agent. There's a problem in the design. It lets moisture in, and certain drying agents don't prevent the moisture getting in. When the moisture gets in, the propelling mechanism can alight too quickly and cause fragments of metal to come out from the airbag, which, as the Minister said, tragically have killed one person in Australia and also tragically severely injured another. But we've had a number of incidents in Australia with misdeploying airbags. So the recall basically says that they have to, by the end of June, have a rolling schedule to replace all the airbags. That schedule must be available on their website. That will allow people to enter the vehicle identification number, which every vehicle's got. It's a 17-character individual number. You can find out your number. We've got guidance on our website as to how to do that if people don't know. Enter that number and you'll find out whether your airbag is one of 3 categories. The first category is those that are in the critical category. They're alpha airbags, so described because they were made badly. They were the original airbags that people were aware of back in 2009. It's critical they get replaced. Most have been. We're not sure how many are left in cars that are actually being driven around, but they're cars that were made in about 2001 to 2004. They're a minority, but it's critical that those airbags be taken out, and if anybody's got an alpha airbag, they stop driving the car immediately because there's a 1 in 2 chance of misdeployment with those badly made airbags. The bulk of the airbags are ones that weren't badly made, they've just got a design fault. And that design fault will materialise over time. The soonest it will materialise, we're advised by all the experts, is 6 years, but it can be anywhere between 6 to 25 years depending on the geographic location of the vehicle. So that's why we can stagger the recall deal with those that are dangerous first, but get them all out of the system by the end of 2020. The other crucial bit of this is communications. That's absolutely fundamental. This compulsory recall requires people, manufacturers, to take quite specific steps to locate individual consumers, be it through email, mail, text, courier services if need be, but also to mass advertise. And I think that's, in many senses, what's been missing. TV, radio, social media, to get the message out directly to the consumer and broadly to the community. So this is, as I say, a compulsory recall. The recall schedule must be met. If it's not met, that's a breach of our Act with a penalty of $1.1 million per breach. And we have a team in place to actively, well, we've had a team in place doing the work to get to this point. That team will be now actively monitoring the recall and making sure that it works as it should, and we get all these airbags out of Australian cars by the end of 2020.